Hey, Billy from Matterport here. I had some great questions this week and over the last month or so when it comes to how to scale a Facebook ads account, the most efficient way to do it, what to look out for, etc. So just going to run over all these questions and give some detailed answers to them in this video. If you have any more questions when it comes to Facebook ads that you want me to answer, whether it's launching, whether it's how to scale, just leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. So starting off with the meat and potatoes at the top. When it comes to what I would call vertical scaling, which is essentially increasing the budget on a single ad set, should you just increase it 20% every day? I think this is too aggressive, especially at a consistently high budget. If you get, like I've said in the second question, if you get above 250 a day, if you're doing it every single day, I don't think that's giving it a lot of time to have consistent performance. And also what I prefer to see happen is for you to increase budget, leave it the 2 to 3 days so you can see that performance continues to be good. Because if you're scaling an ad set and again the next day you just scale it again because it looks good, it could just run off a cliff and you're not going to be able to see that and adjust, and you're going to waste a bunch of budget. So from starting budget, so let's say you start an ad set at $50 a day, $100 a day, whatever it is, I would be more aggressive from the start. If it's at 50, I'd be happy to bump it to 100. If it's at 100, I'd be happy to bump it to 150. But once you start getting north of 200, probably 250, then you probably want to do 20% every 3 to 5 days from there. And again, during those 3 to 5 days, what you're looking out for is that metrics stay consistent. So what you might see once you increase the budget is that the lead flow increases for the first 1 to 2 days, but cost per call increases. So cost per lead stays the same, but the lead volume is increased. And then as those people turn into calls, obviously this is specifically for a call funnel, you'll see that the calls start to come in day 2 to 3. KPIs like the cost per call will come back in line with your KPI, and then you'll be good to increase the budget again. And you'll probably see a similar thing as kind of lead volume increases. A couple of days of lag as people get through the email sequence or just come back to your ads, then they'll convert and become a call. So that's what's really important. As far as the specifics of like why 20% every 3 to 5 days too, what happens if you increase your budget really aggressively? So let's say from 500 to 750. Facebook has, because again, you'll see when you have your audience, even if it's 5 million people, you're not getting 5 million impressions a day, I'm guessing, or even in a week. So what Facebook is doing is reaching just a pocket of that audience. And so in the beginning, if you're at $50 a day, what Facebook is going to do is go to the most aware people that have probably already engaged with your ad, already engaged with your Facebook page, Instagram page, whatever the case is. It's going to go to those people, and those are most likely to convert. So initially the results might be really good. But then if you just increase the budget from $50 a day to $250 a day, Facebook has to go and find a bunch more people. Sorry, just had a coughing fit there. I could feel it coming on. Okay, so yes, if you increase your budget from $50 to $250 a day, it had this pool of warm people it was going after and serving your ads to, what we'll call an impression pool. If you bump it to $250, what is going to have to go and find a bunch of new people to go after, and what in most cases will happen is those people will be much colder. They maybe haven't seen your ad before. They're brand new to what you do, and again, those people are not only going to take longer to convert, they're potentially not going to convert at as high a rate as that small initial impressions pool that you had of warm people. So that can lead to very volatile performance that sometimes doesn't come back in line. Whereas what I find is if you're more conservative with the budget increases, Facebook will have to expand the audience, but it won't do it so drastically. It won't go to a totally brand new pool of people and kind of panic because it's like, well, we've got to spend this $250 today, so let's just go and find a bunch of people we can serve this ad to, and they may not be the most appropriate people. So that's kind of the reason, the thinking behind it. Again, that's not really serve me too wrong. We'll come to some horizontal scaling as well and stuff you can do if your ad set gets to a certain level, stops performing. If you bring the budget down, it stabilizes. And you just find you can't get above a certain budget. The next question I got asked was, is there a maximum budget I would assign to a winning ad set? Again, in this example, they said, is it $200 a day or is it more? So I have ad sets in account right now that have more than $1,000 per day spending on them. Past that level, I just get a bit nervous. I mean, there's not going to be something drastic that happens beyond $1,250 a day or whatever it is. But one thing that I bear in mind and kind of the internal rule, because I look at this as like investing, you wouldn't want all of your And again, Facebook ads is risky at the best of times. So you wouldn't want all of your investment in, you're taking on a lot of risk if you have all your investment in one ad set in this example. So I never want to have more than a third of the total spend go into one ad set. So again, if you're at 8K a day and there's $1,000 a day to an ad set, that's really not an issue. But if you're at $2,000 a day and $1,000 a day is to an ad set, and the other 1,000 is mixed across 3 or 4 ad sets, that is a bit of a risk. Purely from this place of, like, if that ad set ceases to perform, if it goes off a cliff, if you experience like creative fatigue that you're not able to fix, you don't have a quick way to replace that spend within 3 days or so. So that's really it. So if we take a better example where things are more spread out, let's say you're spending 2K a day, and ad set is $500 a day. It starts to die off. It's non-viable anymore. You've tried reducing the budget. You've tried introducing new creative. Can't be saved. You have to turn it off. You have other ad sets, and you're at 2K a day in that example. You're spending now $1,500 a day. You probably have other places where you could scale that ad set. You could duplicate winning ad sets, launch them again. It's going to be pretty easy for you to again replace that spend within 2 to 3 days. Versus, again, if half of your spend is gone in the account, you're going to have to either be really aggressive, which is again going to lead to a lot of volatility, and comes back to the points made in number 1, where you're going to scale ad sets from $250 a day to $500 a day in a day, or over 2 days. You're going to reach a widely different audience. Cost per call is going to get out of whack, or whatever it is, cost per purchase is going to get out of whack, and you're going to be in a much worse situation. So I really try and hedge, balance the account out as much as I can. Again, if an ad set's performing really well, of course I'm going to scale it as far as I can, but knowing that I want to have new stuff testing in the background, so that if ever it doesn't perform, I've got stuff that I can lean on, the stuff that's performing, even if it's not as well, it's close. And it's within KPI, and I can scale it up. So that's important. Just as a rule as well, it's not specifically to this question, but I try and have at least 20% of the budget in the account. Again, 80-20, I know it's a bit of a trope, but I try and have 20% assigned to testing consistently, whether it's new creative, whether it's new campaign structures, whether it's DCO, whatever it is that we're testing, whether it's new audience testing, whatever it is. I try to have at least 20% assigned to that, just so that we're constantly finding new winning ad sets that we can scale in the event the current ones we have don't work. So whilst it's important to double down on what's working, it's also important to have a backup plan. So cool. And then when you hit the maximum budget, so let's say we get to $1,000 a day, we're spending $2,500 a day. We don't want to put any more budget into that because it's going to increase our risk. And let's say we've tried it and it doesn't work. What I would then do is, because this is something I've consistently done, because again, it comes back to that principle, people call it pocket theory or whatever you want to call it, where you're just reaching a certain impressions pool in that larger audience. What you can do is duplicate your winning ad set again, probably lower the budget. So let's say it's $1,000 a day, I'd relaunch it again at $100 a day. And what you'll see is that it will reach a different audience, and sometimes it can perform better, maybe slightly worse, but it depends on the situation. Again, it can vary wildly based on how Facebook or which audience segment Facebook chooses to target. But again, if it works, then you have 2 winning ad sets. You can scale up one of them as well. The argument for this would probably be that there's going to be some audience overlap. I've not seen that be a huge issue unless your frequency is super, super high. It's just not something that I would even worry about as far as competing with your own ads. Next thing too, which I've looked to do, so really Facebook's automation, I only really look to use when I have proven assets that I've proven with ABO, with more manual methods. So when it comes to using a DCO, which is like dynamic creative assets, putting 10 ads in there, giving Facebook 3-4 copy variations, headlines and stuff to test, I only really do that when all of those assets have been proven by themselves. Same with the CBO. If I have 3 winning audiences, let's say lookalike stacks working, interest stacks working, and broad is working separately in an ABO campaign, what I would do is use those audiences and probably use 5 to 10, probably 5 to 8 is better, at least 5 winning ads in each of those 3 ad sets, put them in a CBO campaign with campaign budget optimization, which is going to give Facebook license to spend between those ad sets wherever it feels the performance is going to come on a given day. I've seen that lead to much more stability and less volatility versus an ad set optimized campaign. And so that's another way that you can start to scale. If you have a winning ABO campaign, again, you feel like there's not a lot more you can get out of that. Maybe it is starting to get volatile once you increase the budget anymore. You can look to launch a CBO with the best assets, consolidate things, and scale that. So cool. And then as far as what metrics I look to decide whether to scale an ad set or campaign, for most of the clients we work with, we do have some level of lead grading and like quality and early indicators of quality. So I'll touch on that later on, and there's another question I want to cover that. But essentially, as long as the call cost is good, the quality of the calls isn't massively a problem. Again, I audit for the clients on a regular basis. They'll send us bad fits, and I'll do an analysis based on which campaigns they came from. If any particular campaign is an issue, I will look to pause it, make some changes to the audience, whatever I need to do to fix it. If it doesn't get fixed and it's still an issue, I'll cut it. So that's what we do initially. Obviously, up to the level of CAC, like we find out what our average CAC is, and I'm not going to spend significantly more than that on an ad set before getting a sale. Really, what you want to be looking at when you're scaling an ad set and just the account as a whole is if you're at 2.5x cash ROAS or above, you're in a good spot to scale. I found cash is the only way really to scale an account. That's why it's super important that your sales team's dialed in. The cash collection percentage is great. You have a product priced high enough that you're going to achieve a 2.5 cash ROAS. Anything above that, you're good to scale, because again, typically if you're at a 2.5 cash, you're probably at a 4 to 5x revenue ROAS. So you've got enough cash to scale month one and reinvest that ad spend, knowing you're going to make it back on the payment plans as they collect. And then again, if you're not going to dip below probably a 2x as you scale, as long as you have things dialed in and again the sales team is performing. So those are really the biggest metrics: cost per call within KPI, good feedback from the sales team as far as quality, and then a 2.5x cash ROAS. Again, there's times where we've had significantly higher than that for clients, but that's really the bottom number. If we're in that spot, we're in a good place to scale. Cool, that's kind of the scaling stuff. Any questions on that, hit me up. Next is creative testing, something I get a lot of questions on, and kind of factors into the same thing, because again, especially with the way both Google and Facebook are moving, creative is going to be much more of a push, and the media buying, manual audience selection, settings and all of that stuff, aside from copy, is going to be pretty automated. So it's just going to be your creative, both like text copy, and then also the video assets and static assets, if you're on Facebook. So as far as what budget to start an ad set off when testing, this really comes back down to where your budget is in the account right now. So most of the clients that we have are spending at least 30K a month, so more than $1,000 a day. So the question I ask myself really, especially with creative testing or any testing, is like how long is it going to take? Obviously, I don't want to launch a campaign, an ad set at $500 a day, knowing that it's untested assets, because it could not perform and it's going to mess up the whole efficiency of the account. So as long as it's below 20% of the overall spend in the account, we're good. Secondary to that is how long is it going to take for this ad set to be useful? So if I launch an ad set testing creative assets at $5 a day, I said we can be more aggressive in the beginning. Let's say it's 20% every 3 to 5 days. It's going to take 2 weeks, if not more, not just to get a call, but for me to scale it to the level where it's contributing to the account in any meaningful way, which is just not good and not helpful. So you want to launch it at a level where within a week, within 3 to 5 days, it's going to be helpful to you. It's going to be starting to book calls, etc. So if your call cost is $200, you launch or $100, sorry, launch an ad set at $10 a day. It's going to take you potentially 10 days for you to get your first call, and then be able to scale that campaign. And even one call isn't really valid data for you to scale an ad set. So it's important you launch it in a way to contribute the account. Again, in a different scenario, let's say your spend in the account is $100 a day. We want to keep it below that 20%. So if you're launching it $10, $15 a day, in that scenario, that's fine. But yeah, there's kind of a rough framework for you to decide on that. Again, how important is the test as well? Is there anything else you're testing? If it's the only test and it's going to take up the whole 20%, if we're spending $1,000 a day, we know creative is the biggest bottleneck. We know like CTRs aren't great. People aren't clicking on the ad. People aren't stopping on the ad. Then assigning $200 a day and cutting it from somewhere else is going to probably be the best bet. If you know it's the bottleneck, you want to aggressively attack it. So lots of nuance to this, but again, I hope that gives you a framework and you can use that to make a decision on your own, creative testing based on how much you're spending a day. Cool. And then when testing new things, how long do you let things run for? So specifically they were asking, do you let it run to what your typical CAC is? So yeah, that's basically what I would recommend. So find your average CAC, because really, again, I know Alex and Mosi would be big on this, but really your CAC to LTV ratio is what you should be scaling on. Again, cash ROAS is partly an indicator of that, but you should find out what your CAC is. So let's say it costs on average it costs $1,000 for you to acquire a customer. You want to run an ad set as long as the call cost is within KPI, lead cost is within KPI, reasonable. Again, if the cost per lead is high, but the cost per call is fine, we're not worried about it. In that case, if you know there's quality coming through as well as far as those, so that would be the early indicators that is in point 2 there. You want to have early indicators as far as app grading, what is the quality from these, get feedback from your sales team. If you're taking the sales calls as well, understand where the good calls are coming from and where the bad calls are coming from as far as ad sets and campaigns. And then that will give you some idea of whether an ad set should be left on or not before you hit that $1,000 where your average CAC is. So one thing that's possible too, I'm not a big fan of this historically, although I have been doing it somewhat recently and it has been paying off. So again, test this for yourself. What I will look at, so if a cost per call isn't in KPI, or let's say it spent $1,000 and it didn't perform, what I'll do is turn an ad set off. I'll regularly review ad sets that I've turned off, and sometimes I find that there's a bunch of calls that came in after it was turned off. There's sales that came in after it was turned off, and so in those cases it could be worth turning it back on. That doesn't work so great for Google ads, but for Facebook ads, I found that to be fairly good strategy. If you turn them back on, they're fairly consistent. Obviously, if the budget was super high, I would drop it. If it was at $600 a day, let's drop it to $200 a day to relaunch it, and just see if you start to get some calls back start to get some performance. I've done that 2 or 3 times recently where performance after it was turned off was significantly better than I thought. Because again, we're dealing with the sales cycle here. If let's say it's been live for 30 days, but your average sales cycle is 30 to 60 days. If you turn an ad set off, it's likely that those calls are going to turn into sales at a later date, whether it's through follow-ups, whether it's through somebody booking a call for a week later or 5 days later. So it's really important, again, that you make an assessment of ad sets, not just when they're live. Make the best decision you can while they're live, and then afterwards just review things on a regular basis. How did cost per call look there? How did ROAS look there? 30 days later. So yeah, don't want to labour that too much, but that's a point there. As far as how long you should run the test for, really you want to be running it to at least your average CAC, as long as all of the metrics are in KPI. Cool. That's pretty much answers the maximum budget I spent on that, except for turning it off. This is just a rough scale, so there's a lot of more nuance to this. Again, partly it comes into how much you're spending a day, how much of the average account you're spending on this. If you're spending significantly more a day, you can afford to let things run a little bit longer to see if they turn out. If you're only spending $100 a day or less, you need to be more aggressive. Turn things off aggressively and just focus on what's working, and then once you've got performance and profit, then you can worry about testing things properly or scientifically. Cool. That said, this is a rough framework. So really, when I look at an ad set or a campaign, this is more ad set or ad. I guess it applies if it's CPO, but ad set or ad, I'm looking at what the average CPL is. If my average CPL is $10, just to make it easy, if it gets to $15 or $20 and it doesn't have any leads, I turn it off. This is less true for Google Ads. For Facebook, it's very true. I've never seen an ad set perform bad in the beginning and then get better over time. That if it's going to perform well at all, it will perform well in the beginning. So again, I think on Facebook you could be more aggressive. Google's optimization takes longer, learning phase takes longer, so it does optimize over time. I've not seen that happen so much on Facebook. So again, if your average CPL, and be honest about this, if it's $10, obviously it's not going to be $10 everywhere. There might be some that are 12, some that are 9, some that are 10, 25, whatever it is. If your average is 10, let it run to $15, $20. If there's no lead, turn off the ad or turn off the ad set. Again, you should only turn off an ad set when there's no ads in it under at KPI. Because again, the ad set performance at the ad set level, when you're looking at that, could be just due to one ad that's shit in the bed and affecting it all. So after, let's say, leads are in KPI, they've stayed in KPI, we'll spend until 1.5 the cost per call. Let's say the cost per call, just to make it easy and keep the numbers round, is average is $100. So again, that'll be 10% lead to call rate. That's pretty okay. We'd prefer it was a double. So yeah. If it's $100, let it run to $150. If the lead is in KPI but there's no calls booked, I'd probably turn it off. Again, you can keep an eye on it, see if it books some calls afterwards from those leads. But I just turn off the ad set, especially in the beginning when you need to be more aggressive and you're just launching and your budget isn't that high. And then if cost per call, so at every stage here, it is based on the other one still staying in KPI. So if cost per lead is fine in the beginning and then just like skyrockets and say like it's normally $10, it starts to be $20 and there's still no calls booked at 1.5, then I'd turn it off. Same here, if we'd run it until the average CAC if cost per call is within KPI. So if not, turn the ad or ads it off. So again, if the calls are in KPI but an ad spends $1,000, so $100, it's got 10 calls, there's no closes yet. Again, we'd expect a 15% close rate at least to cold traffic. If there's no sales, we would just turn that off. Look to just scale into other ads or ad sets. So that's that one. Cool. And then when doing variations on winning ads, what should you focus on? So this is something that I kind of already knew, and it was already my methodology, but people like Alex Hormozi, even Cole Gordon to a degree, some other people that I watch, 80% variations on winners, 20% brand new angles. So that's typically what we'll do, whether it's rewording winners, whether it's recording them on a new background, new thumbnail, new banners, whatever it is. We'll just look to do that on the winners because you can scale a winner a long way. I think people get confused on this and maybe don't realize a lot of the accounts that I've seen scale consistently only really have 2 or 3 winners in the account. They just get rehashed, redone to combat creative fatigue and then just scaled as far as they can go. And so you only really need to find 2 or 3 winning ads. I found to really have a strong account to scale to 5K a day, as long as your funnel's going to have to be dialed in, sales team's going to have to be dialed in. But as far as ads, that's kind of what I think you're looking at. And then the 20% of brand new angles should really be based on a hypothesis. It's a mistake a lot of people make. They just do random stuff that isn't based on something they think is going to work. So I would look at your ads right now, go, okay, the ones that don't work, why don't they work? Or the ones that work, why do they work? Is there a certain word pattern that we're using? Would they benefit from more social proof? Would they benefit from a more specific call out? Like we're talking, this ad is for dentists in the Houston area, whatever it is. Or would they benefit from a specific ad style, whether that's selfie style on your phone, recording it at a desk, whether it's like, I wouldn't say UGC because I'm not a fan of that, but whether it's testimonials from a client, whatever it is, testing a different ad style, but it should be a hypothesis that's, if we do this, this will be the result. Then you launch it, measure it against the result that you expected, create a conclusion that worked or didn't work for X reason, and then you create a new hypothesis and it goes round and around, and that's what you should do for the 20% of brand new angles. Obviously for the variations, it's going to be similar. If we add a new banner, if we add a new thumbnail, it's going to increase the CTR all. This is the effect it should have. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. The question I had was, do you just focus on the first 5 seconds of the ad? I mean, mostly yes. So something that's really important and something my business partner, Lee Thompson, has told me recently, and we've had a lot of discussions about, is optimizing things like front to back and the things that people are going to see the most. So the thumbnail and the first 3 seconds of the video are the thing people are going to see the most. So those are the most important things when it comes to Facebook ads, and then your headline and then your primary text. So those should be the things that you focus on. As far as like the CTA in the ad, all of that stuff can just come later because not that many people are going to see it as a percentage compared to the people that are going to see the first 3 seconds, or 5 seconds as I've said here. So that's the part that you should optimize. So typically when we launch a creative batch for our clients, we'll launch 5 to 10 hooks. So the hooks is going to be the first 5 to 10 seconds of the ad, and then we might test 2 different bodies. And you can see from the way that's set up and the volume in hooks versus bodies, which part of the ad we think is most important. So yes, we do focus on the first 5 seconds of the ad. And even second 0 if you're talking about thumbnails or that kind of stuff. So next is, do we change minimal things like music, editing? Is that also worth testing? So not really, especially in the beginning. So if you're at 5K a day, you've found a winning ad. At scale, those small changes are going to have a big difference. But at smaller scale, there's going to be so small that you're just not even going to notice it as well. So that's why at the beginning you want to focus on the macro, on the big things. So here that's like, again, finding different ways to say your best hook, testing brand new hooks, etc. Making macro changes, like bigger changes, like, you know, recording the ad in a different format, adding way more social proof into an ad, recording it as a loom instead of recording it just speaking to the camera, whatever it is, big changes. And then once you find a winning ad, it's been performing consistently for a long time and you're at a decent amount of scale in the account, let's say $2,000 a day plus, then you can start to test more micro things that are like having different music on the ad. And again, all of those things, I would focus those on winners. I wouldn't be doing different, like launching new ads and go, we've got 5 hooks, let's test it with 2 different music styles. I think it's going to be a waste of time. It's going to be a waste of budget. So only do this really for winners. Again, winning ads can perform for a long time. Like I've said, that you only really need 2 or 3 to scale an account a long way. So the biggest thing you're going to run into is scaling those winners and assigning more spend to them. They're going to start to fatigue. So what can you do to combat that? Things like recording the same ad in a different location. Maybe it is changing the music on the ad. Maybe it is refreshing the thumbnail. Maybe it is adding banners, like we've already spoken, all that stuff. I don't want to labor the point too much. I've repeated myself far more than enough. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Again, that's all I wanted to cover in this video. Any questions you've got, just shoot them in the comments of this video and I will get back to them as quickly as I can. Hope you have an amazing day. Speak to you soon.